Hi, this is Joelle, your podcast host. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are recording this podcast on unceded Indigenous lands. Tiohtià:ke, Montreal is recognized as the custodian land of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation. This serves as a reminder that this history, which is often forgotten or neglected, enabled us to be here. As a white settler, this is especially important for me to recognize the role my ancestors played in colonization. That feminist hopes to create a space for dialogue, exchange, and critical reflection. With that being said, I invite you to think critically about your institutional and personal relation with the land on which you stand.
Look at that feminist. Oh my god, she's so annoying. Yeah, I know, she talks too much.
We can still get lovers if you this one. Keeping the car, it's a legend. When you want to be when you confident, say hi, just say hi to my independence.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
We're here today with Daniela and Dorothy.
Yes, ma'am.
Love you girls.
Thank you. We love you too.
Oh, thank you. Today we're going to be talking about racism and the many issues of racism within within feminism, which I think is so problematic. As when I started studying women's studies and all the different theories of feminism, one thing that really stuck out to me was how white and middle class the feminism movement started and was back then, and even today still is. And I think just in general, there's so many voices that are being silenced with the feminism movement that I do not agree with.
Definitely. I think personally, as a Black woman, my first introduction to feminism was very white. That's what I was shown and everything, and it was kind of a given to me when I saw what feminism was. Oh, it's about women being empowered, and I couldn't see I couldn't see people that looked like me feel identified with it, right? And even my mom, she would never say she's a feminist because, well, she would say it, but not. She was I'm not like those feminists or something like that, because she never identified with being empowered as a woman, just because of also the fact that she's a Black.
The oppression.
The oppression that is in there. Because my mom worked at in banks before, and she had woman bosses. And they are the one that oppressed her in the work. And they were like, oh, yes, I'm a woman. I'm a boss. But she could never relate to that because the girl boss that she had oppressed her for her race, and never felt that camaraderie that could come along with feminism. And seeing her, witnessing the way she was treated, just reflected on me and my experience in high school, right? Being a very opinionated Black woman, I wanted equality for women, for myself and for other women. And when I joined these conversations, I couldn't relate to the issues that were raised.
Yeah.
So it was okay, let me I do believe in equality and stuff like that, but I can't come in these spaces and have a genuine talk about feminism.
What really means, what it could really mean to other women.
Yeah. Couldn't apply
Do you
it
feel
to
like
everything.
when you would bring in, when you would enter these conversations and you couldn't relate, do you feel like you couldn't even bring your own perspective to the table because those women would be what is she doing here?
Do you feel like it'd be oh, you're a pessimist. You're being so negative.
that
Gotcha, girl.
but also when I would bring it up, there would be no response. They would just be oh,
I never saw it that way.
because they couldn't relate to
I didn't see it that way. That sucks. And they never had any prompt for it after that, any response or any answer or solution, because they never confronted with intersectionality in a sense. Like even as au primaire, like in primary school, I would understand the concept, but I wouldn't be able to verbalize it because I didn't know what intersectionality meant. But like explaining it around and saying, yeah, but me being a black girl, it's more difficult. I feel things differently, and I experience things differently. My mom told me she was fired because she was a black person. In the workspace, they accused her of things and stuff like that, and her boss was a girl. So like when I explained those things, all I had received was pity. Never like, oh yeah, that's an issue, that's weird, and we should, what can we do about it?
They would never contribute to the conversation. Just
Never.
be like,
Exactly.
just be like, well, that sucks. Like,
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
Exactly.
Totally get it.
Yeah, and I think one big thing about intersectionality is that you're at the intersection of two oppressions, of being a woman and being black. And it's like most of the time you're asked to choose which oppression you're gonna like fight for, or you're gonna like speak about. And it's never something that we can put together like being a black woman. No, it's like, okay, now like
let's work on that later.
Yeah. It's like
Another time.
Now you're black, and we're gonna talk about your injustices being black, and after that we're gonna deal with the woman, or
as
vice versa.
As if they didn't like, and like we're both affecting me in the very same way at the same time,
And them being intertwined didn't have their like issues of their own.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think black men experience life a lot different than black women. Same thing for Latino men and Latino women. Like, you know,
definitely. And I think being no contribution to the conversation makes it feel for racialized women, or women that are part of the LGBTQ or any minority type disabled women. This makes it feel like we're talking to air, you know? And the leaders of this movement, or the leaders of the conversation, not anymore, not today now, that's a more normal thing. But back in the days, it was okay for them to not address those issues, and for us to feel like we're talking to air and not getting anywhere. So it feels pointless to join in if your issues will never be solved, right?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just to add to what you said, there's this really if you guys want to watch, still be kind of woke. I say woke because I don't really like that word.
I know, same, but
I don't
I
like
use
that
it.
word, but I use it. If you want to be woke and kind of watch like a funny show, watch Good Trouble. Good Trouble, it's actually really good. It's on Disney Plus. But there's this episode where Mariana, she's a Latina engineer, and she works for this startup company in LA where there's not that many women, and she wants to fight for equal salaries. And then she realizes that there's also a racial gap in the pay. Not only, like, she's the one being paid the least because she started not too long ago and she's Latina. But like another woman who started at the same time as her, being white, is being paid a lot more. And then when she brought it up to like because she's like doing like this committee thing where they want to fight for, and then when she brought it up to the committee, they were like, well, I think we should fight one issue at a time.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that's how the whole like feminism movement started, was, okay, we're gonna solve white middle class woman's problem first. And then after that, if we can get to you, it was almost like
just get in line.
Yeah, it's like it was get in line behind us. Like, we were here first. Let's solve like women's issue, and then we'll solve black women's issue, Latinos women's issues. Like it was never like a thing of group and like getting together and trying to include everyone. It was always like singling out like the other minorities. And I feel like that's where like the feminism movement was very toxic.
Yeah, definitely. And that's so ironic, because what is insane is that when we think about feminism, we often forget that, well, we don't know that beginning of the feminist movement, and many of the highs and big moments of the feminist movement have been inspired by the racial justice activism. And if we think about like way back, the first female movements, way before that, in 1832, what led to the suffragette movement was a moment with Maria Stuart, who had a talk, a speech about equality and equality of the sexes back in the 19th century.
Yeah.
And that moment led to the Seneca Falls Convention for women's rights in the United States, right? So without that Black woman talking about racial and gender equality back in the days that we probably don't know about today, we wouldn't have the Seneca Falls Convention. We wouldn't have the suffragette movements. We wouldn't have the birth of the feminist movement, because that convention, that moment, that where Maria Stuart talked, raised a red flag for white women of the middle class, of bourgeois status. They were like, oh
shit, like
they're like, we're living similar situations.
Yeah,
that's like, we're living similar oppressions and not having equal rights with white men. We should make something.
I think they almost saw it as a threat, and like that's why like they started their own movement of like white middle class women, because, well, one, they probably didn't care, but two, it's also, I think that they saw this as a threat.
Really?
Because I don't think that they saw it as like, hey, they have like similar oppressions to us, let's get them on board with us. I think that they saw this more as like, oh, if they like start this movement, we're not gonna have like the voice that we want. So they saw this as a threat, and they were like, oh no, like,
I actually never thought about it being that deep. I actually thought about it just being like for example, when you're experiencing a microaggression and a black man is the one that steps in, and white man is the one that steps in and is like, yo, that wasn't cool. that actually passes a lot better than if it were a black man saying like, yo, that wasn't cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I actually think that's what it was. The movement started being white women. And I hate to believe it, but I do believe it in my core that if it would have been women of color who would have started the movement, it would have continued the movement, and then white women would have come along, or like it would have been like mostly a women of color issue. Yeah. We wouldn't like it wouldn't have advanced, unfortunately, because society was not and is still not ready to talk about those issues.
Yeah. And I think this situation is a perfect example of it, because as you can see, we already started that equality movement, that desire for equality back in the days, way before white women. But it got this concept of equality only started to get attraction and started to gain strength when white women decided that it made sense, right? When they decided to fight for it. And it follows us even today, and even before in the 20th century, where we see that the women's liberation movement in the 60s took place. That was right after the civil rights movement, right? And our voices, our screams, our marches are what inspired women to be like, you know what? Well, white women to be like, we need to be free too. Free too. We need to advocate for our rights too.
Yeah.
And now today, if it wasn't for the three women in 2010 that decided to talk about the police brutality and who started the Black Lives Matter movement, if it wasn't for them, I don't know if the big movement of Me Too, was also founded by a Black woman, by the way, but was popularized by white women.
White women in Hollywood.
White women in Hollywood, rich,
which
white
which is even more of a privilege.
Exactly, rich white women. I don't think it would have had the strength that it had if it wasn't inspired by our contribution as Black people, Black women.
Yeah, I think it's just society has such low standards, which is kind of sad. But it's like, the way I see it is that if you're a white person and you like advocate for people of color, or you call out someone like doing a microaggression, people are like, oh my God, like that person is so woke, or like whatever. And then, but if it were a person of color that would advocate, it's like,
Be like,
oh well,
they're
they
so
have
sensitive.
to. No, but they have to because they're a person of color.
Right.
Or
Right? It's like,
or you always get the look of like, you're so sensitive.
You know, like you always react to
like
this thing.
when we're gonna talk about the Kendall thing, I got so many messages of people being like, "You're so sensitive." Like,
yeah, it's like, no, it's actually, if we
You're
don't
missing
talk
the
about
point.
these things and we're not sensitive to them, it's like, that's when microaggressions happen. Like, and it's so funny because literally before March break, in one of the, because we have a Discord for like the women's studies program, and there's I like to read other classes because I like to, like, I don't know, I like to see what other classes like they're talking about. And then there was one class where like I could see there was like gossiping and there was like tea going on. I was like, oh my
tea.
God, I want to know.
I love tea.
Right? So I scrolled back up and then I read all the tea, and apparently in that class the teacher had like a guest speaker come on, and that guest speaker said the N-word. Then everyone in the Discord were like, hey, like, we need to do something, we need to go to the department, whatever. They were kind of mobilizing, you know. And then after that, I saw like a picture of like the assignment that the teacher had posted, and she had basically asked people to sort of defend the guest speaker's use of the N-word in an assignment. It was like, the question was longer than that, but it was basically like coming down to that. She obviously worded it differently to make it sound better, but it was basically that. And everyone was furious. Like, everyone was like, this is not okay, that this is an assignment. Like, I'm not okay with it. I'm not doing it. Like, we need to go to the department. And then I didn't really hear from it again because the Discord chat just kind of went like off. But then like last week, I got a message from my department that was like a really long letter kind of addressing like, hey, like there was an occurrence in one of our classes where like a guest speaker used the N-word, and like, this is what we're going to do and whatever. And I was taken aback because I was like, I don't understand, one, like why it's still something we need to have a conversation today, because in my head, it's very clear. That it's like, it's not like, no, it's not about your freedom of speech, and no, like, it's not that. But I feel very like sad and enraged that it's still something we need to talk about today, because there are clearly some people who don't see it that way.
I want to say something.
Yeah.
Why do people want to say that word so fucking bad?
I
just like, why? Like,
I don't
like,
know.
if somebody says, yo, it's not, and not even one person, like literally every single person, like with this summer when the issue with U Ottawa happened.
Yeah.
So it wasn't this summer, it was this fall. When the issue with U Ottawa happened, we had white people on radio, on the news, saying like, discussing the use of the N. Well,
yeah, I remember.
It doesn't apply to you. Like, it doesn't apply to you. You can't say like it's not offensive, because it's not offensive to you.
Yeah, it was nowhere. Like, Black people were nowhere to be found. I mean, we had some representations, right? We can't deny that, but a lot of the conversation took place amongst white people, and I will say that any racism issue is something that should be discussed about among white people. Because racism is a white people's issue. Y'all are having a problem with us. I'm just saying, but
no, but it's true. It's true. Like,
I just love the way she's just like, y'all are having an issue with us. Like,
no, like,
we're just cool.
You find us disgusting. I'm just saying, but I just think that the media is not the place for those conversations to only take place among white people only.
I just think people need to educate themselves before
Yeah.
they open their mouths,
Yeah.
especially in the media. Like,
Yeah.
come on, people. Like, you've been, like, you studied this. You went to school.
Yeah.
Like, and you're telling, like, you're not even going to read, like,
Yeah.
like,
No,
really?
Definitely. And I think there's a lack of balance, like, obviously, in the media. Because of, like, yes, we could have white people in the panels and in those discussions. I don't disagree. My only issue is, where are we? And why are you always choosing the same people to talk about this issue when some of them are not even well versed to talk about it?
Yeah. Do you feel like when they have like an issue of race, let's say like a media outlet that's very white, they will, and they have like that issue where it concerns people of color, they're always going to have that same
One
person come on because they're like, oh,
Yes.
that's our token person for like when we have a black issue, we'll bring that person in. Like,
Yeah, I think it's with the fact that the way media is set up, usually they have a media list and they fail to diversify that media list. They see, okay, on a notre...
Because they know
we got our
that
blacks, and our Latinos and our indigenous. And if there's an issue, we'll just, bring them along. And yes, I think this is an issue just for the fact that the way, like we said in other episodes, the way the media is set up, it's so quick that we don't take the time to go do deeper research on the topic. And when it comes to hot topics like racism or the N-word, they had to find someone quick.
And you also not only somebody that's quick, but somebody that they know won't be as controversial and won't have any, won't bring more issues.
yeah.
That
Definitely.
I think that's also a big thing.
Definitely.
Because every time I see somebody on, in the US it happens a lot less, I think, that here. In the US have actually, they're not perfect, but I think that when it comes to those conversations in the mainstream media, they're having very interesting conversations.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you saw recently Rachel Lindsay, who had a conversation with Chris Harrison, the host of The Bachelor, and they were having this conversation about how the franchise is so not diverse, and they're starting to be more diverse, but they had a contestant this season that was extremely, like, she was extremely racist, and the franchise hadn't said anything until that point. And then Chris Harrison was like, well, is it really, like, because they found pictures from like 2018 or 2017. He's like,
type of thing?
yeah, and then he's like, well, is it bad in 2018 or is it bad now? And then she was saying, like, well, it's bad all the time.
Yeah, it's bad either way.
It's bad, period. And all this to say, the conversation was had on national television.
Yeah.
And also, like,
never.
excuse me, but 2018 was 3 years ago. Like, come on. It's not like it was like...
I think he was referring to, like, before people, because I think we have to say that 2020 was, I think, one of the years where nobody was taking any bullshit. Like, we were checking people so much more than... Do you disagree?
I mean, for black people, I'm sorry, I'm not speaking for my race, but for us, I think it started a bit earlier. Like, as you guys know, the Black Lives Matter movement didn't just start yesterday. Yeah. We've been speaking out loud about these, and I just think that our presence in the media we just weren't present in the media because we weren't allowed. Not allowed, but just we were limited in the ability to speak out. But we always spoke about that cultural appropriation, these problematic things. I think we were always speaking.
But you just didn't have the platform to do it.
We just didn't have the platform to do it, because if we just listened to so many podcasts, so many videos, so many YouTubers that have been speaking way before 2020, we didn't take any BS. Since, like, because I remember being 14 years old, I had access to those things on YouTube, on the internet, and I saw that nobody, like, a lot of racialized people were taking no BS, and that's just only in the 2020 because of George Floyd, because of how horrific this thing was,
and because not because of the death of George Floyd, which was extremely terrible and horrific, but because it was caught on video.
And exactly.
Nobody could say
it
didn't happen the way that it did because you could see it.
Exactly. Like, I think this finally, like, people were like, okay, what are we gonna do now? Okay, Black person, here's the platform. But we've been speaking about those things.
Yeah.
And like, what's a little bit frustrating for me is to see, like, especially in the internet, they're like, oh my God, nobody talked about this. And like,
like go on Twitter, we've been talking about
like, we've been talking about this. So I'm gonna let you finish. Like,
No, but what I was gonna say is that I think that the platform that having those conversations in national television in the US, I see it a lot more in the US, but I don't see it here whatsoever.
Definitely.
Like, even saying with like, oh, there's no systemic racism here. That doesn't exist. Really? Because I beg as a person of color, I beg to differ.
I beg to differ.
You know, just saying. Just 2 cents.
You know.
My 2 cents.
And I think it's interesting because my dad actually told me the other day, like, it's crazy how, like, internet and, like, social media had a part to play in that, because he said, like, oh, when I was your age, like, if that would have happened, you know, the incident with George Floyd, he said, here in Quebec, we would not have heard about it.
Nope.
And so it's crazy how, like, we can use social media in a good way, like, to spread a message like this. And it's crazy how you saw it happen, you know, last June, how it really did create a movement, like, countrywide and, like, almost worldwide, you know, even where people were protesting to really say, like, we've had enough. Because I feel like George Floyd was very much like the drop that, you know, made everything sort of, made people of color really, like, enough is enough. And, like, we've had enough. And I think that they had been saying this for such a long time, but because, like you said, there was, like, video of it. Now people were very much, like, seeing it, and they were like, okay, yeah, now I see it. But before, people were like, oh no, we don't see it.
Wouldn't you agree that this time felt different because a lot more people that were not people of color were invested?
That's the only time it felt different for me.
It felt different, and celebrities were involved, and it felt different because there were different voices with different platforms and different experiences.
I think definitely. I think it wasn't the last drop for us because we've been through, but I think it was the scream that was loud enough for white people to turn ahead.
Because they saw it.
It was too horrific, too graphic.
No, I've never met anybody who could really get through the whole thing.
No,
I didn't get through the whole thing. I barely saw it. I think I saw like maybe a minute of it, and I couldn't bring myself to watch it.
So the fact that it made a white society turn ahead and take a stop, I think that's what allowed for the conversation to go. And that's why also the fact that we've been through, and the fact that we also like had so much documents and so much
other examples,
and so much.
There was stats to back up.
We had so many stats to back up, but also so many conversations that we already had
that were ignored,
that were just resurfaced, and that needed to be repeated in the media because people didn't. They missed out. It felt strong. It felt deep because we already had so much material to give y'all. Right? Et puis ça, like it, sorry for my French, but it allowed for the thing to solidify because we already gave you content to binge watch for years. So yeah, I think definitely, unfortunately, in like we needed that little thing for wider society to turn ahead, and for people to start listening, we needed white voices to speak.
that's really sad. I think it's almost like the feminism movement when
Yes.
like when men speak about feminism, now it's like people are hearing about it and really like willing to listen. And I feel like that's what happened with BLM last year, is that I really felt, and I felt really bad because I felt like some of these people around me that were white were almost taking a part of this as a trend. And because it was a hot topic at the moment, that's why like news media outlet decided to finally talk about it, because like you said, it couldn't be ignored anymore. And now like finally like white people were talking about racism, and like it was finally almost like worthy of like all this airspace. And it made me really frustrated because as a white person, I mean, it gives it's very disgusting to see that like, okay, like you're gonna care about people of color now just because it's hot. Like no, but seriously.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you something, both of you actually, because back then when it first happened, I'm someone, you guys both follow me on Instagram.
Yes.
I like to share on my stories like a lot of activism stuff about feminism, about, you know, supporting the LGBTQIA plus, and about like people of color and empowering voices of people of color. Like I'm really into that, and I'm really into sharing stuff. But I don't share everything I see, because I follow also a lot of activism groups.
Yeah.
I don't share everything that I see because it would just be too much. What I like to see is that if I see a post that is very like engaging and that like, wow, I actually learned something from this, that's when I'll share it, because I think maybe some other people can learn from this just like I did. So when that whole thing happened, you know, I was already sort of partaking in that, and I'm someone who's not really like okay, now it's like Pride Month, so now we have to share Pride stuff. It's like, I do this like all year. And I don't care that it's fucking April 26th or November 3rd. Like I don't care about like having like specific months for specific things. And oh, now it's Black History Month, so now I'm going to talk about Black voices. No, I'll do it all year round. And I'll do it when I find like, when I read a good book, like I'm not going to be like, okay, let's save this book for Black History Month. Like, no, like I'm not like that. So that's why I was very frustrated, because at the time when this whole thing happened, I was sharing other stuff just like I was usually doing. But I got like called out almost by people, because they were like, oh, I thought you were like very vocal on your Instagram, and I thought you were very like activism and whatnot. And I don't see you share like enough about like the BLM movement and about George Floyd. And that's when I was like, I doubted myself so much. Like I fucking, like I started taking a step back, and I was like, okay, like is what I'm doing okay? Like, did I share enough? And I started to go look back at my stories and counting the stories that I shared about BLM. And that's when I was like, okay, I don't think that's the point behind what we're trying to do here.
Like,
Go ahead.
I just, because I think what you're about to say, I'm pretty sure it's incredible. I want to touch on something, because there was this trend that was for the black square. The black square meant, what it initially meant is that you were pausing your content for that day, and you were going to share stuff about the BLM movement, or you were just going to listen. You were just going to, and sometimes I would much rather, I share a lot of things that I know, stuff that I know about. If I don't know, I'm not going to pretend that I know and share. I would much rather listen to a creator, look for, you know, when I see something, I listen to it. I don't necessarily want to share stuff, because sometimes I don't know enough about that topic to share it. So for me, it's a lot more powerful to be silent, but actively knowing that you are being part of the conversation and educating yourself and learning. That's my 2 cents.
Yes, I think this is great. I don't know if you guys know about this podcast, Woke or Whatever, one of my favorite Montreal podcasts. One of the first episodes was about how to be an ally and stuff like that. And listening was a key element of it. And I think that the context that we were in last year was not the best, because most of it was performative. Who shares the most? Who, like, honestly, I think the best thing you can do is not only share with your audience, but the goal at the end of the day is to change minds and to have real conversation in real life. Not only on social media, which is important, but also how do you check your family members? How do you check your friends? How do you check your schools? And I think some things were done, but for the most part, people stopped their activism at the internet.
Yeah.
And that's cute. That's nice, but I think we have so much more to do, and listening is a big part of it, because in listening, you will see the solutions that are already
In place.
not in place, but proposed.
Okay.
Because as Black women, as Black people, as racialized minorities, we already gave you solutions that you could go listen to, and and try to contribute to help, like concretely.
Yeah.
And sharing is cool, sharing is good, but listening is better, because you get to see where you can go to change things. And there are many intricate issues that are too long to explain on a Instagram post. And I think a lot of white people or non-Black people didn't necessarily take the time to do that listening long enough. They were like, you know what, I'm gonna listen to Black people one day during that black square. Sorry, guys.
Square day.
That's okay.
And then I'm gonna go on with my day.
Yeah.
And I think if there was actually real listening being done since that time, we would have seen way more change, way faster. We're in 2021, and there's still so many things that could have been changed and could have been in place, but because we didn't have enough listening being done, weren't done.
Yeah.
And I think there's also power in understanding when is your time to talk.
When is your yes,
You know,
Yeah, which is why I was almost trying to silence myself, because I was like, yes, you always saw me as someone who strives for these. Right now, like, I'm staying silent. I mean, I wasn't staying silent. I was sharing resources, and I was trying to share resources so that people could not like see me as the resource, because I'm not the resource at all.
100%.
I know nothing. I'm white. Okay, like but I was trying to share resources so that people could go to these Black women and these Black people
Creators.
to go find that information there, because I thought, I can't share any experience that I have. I'll at least share that. But I was I was not oversharing. I was sharing just a little bit, but I felt like I had to sort of stay silent at some point, because it wasn't my time to speak, and it wasn't my sort of like I didn't have the experience, so I couldn't be the one to speak, and I'd rather people go listen to the Black voices than listen to whatever I have to say, because it's useless.
And that's powerful within itself. I remember we posted something on the Debatable account, and we were like, we are pausing our content for the day. We will only be sharing content regarding the Black Lives Matter movement until our next episode, which was also a Black Lives Matter oriented, where we shared a lot of documentaries, books, charities and stuff like that people could go to, because we're, like you said, I'm not a resource. I've been saying it, I think, every single episode that I've been here. I'm not Black, and I don't know about the Black experience. I've only know about my experience, and I'm not going to pretend that I know what the other person is going through, because I don't. And that's insensitive within itself.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of power in just sitting back and educating yourself, because in this era where everybody thinks that they know everything, it's very powerful to say, hey, I don't know enough about that.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I would much rather, please teach me. Please educate me.
Yeah. And that's how I saw it too. But then I got called out by one of my Black friend who she saw my silent as me not
Being an ally?
Being an ally, yeah. So that's why I was a little bit confused.
That's it is understandable, because when we think about it, I just from a personal account, when the George Floyd thing happened, 2020, to me it had been 5 years, 6 years in fact, of me fighting relentlessly and to talk about oppression.
Yeah.
In high school, in my personal relationships with people, and feeling unheard, or feeling heard but semi-heard.
Yeah.
And that was the moment for this these pleas, these my work to finally have an impact, because enough people were turning their heads to listen. And I slipped up, I was tired. After 6 years of fighting, of speaking, of talking about it,
And
I was
trying
tired
to get people's attention.
and trying to get people's attention. And that was too much of this was already traumatizing for me. I needed a rest. And I think your friend needed a rest, and a lot of Black people needed a rest to deal with that trauma, and needed white people to take
over
the baton.
Yeah. Okay.
And I remember how many people, how many Black people told me, so many people are in my DM and they're saying, educate me.
Oh my God, yeah.
Teach me. What should I do? How can I fix racism?
Yeah.
Well, they're tired.
Yeah.
And traumatized. And sad.
Go
And
to the books and the people who want to talk.
Exactly. But now I have to refer you to those books, and I have to explain and interpret them for you. And then I have to tell you to share, tell you to spread the message, tell you to do that, while I'm trying to rest, trying to grieve. So I think it may be like you are an active person, you are an ally, and you've been doing the work, and maybe you wanted that time to listen, but as someone that already fought, and I'm not making it on you, but any ally, maybe at that time you should have been, you know what, I'm charged up.
Yeah.
Now it's time to push.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. Someone could, other people could be...
Yeah, because there are different Black experiences.
There are different Black experiences. There are different people...
And different personalities.
Different personalities and different perspective about this issue. But I think for people who needed to grieve and take time for themselves, they needed wider society to take the baton and make the conversation. Yo, what's going on? How are we going to fix this? This is messed up. Yes, we're going to listen, but we're also going to have an actual action plan, and also talk to the people who still have their heads turned. And we had that, but a lot of people said they were listening. For that moment, they were like, okay, I'm going to be listening today. I'm really going to be taking in. But did you really take in? Or did you take a break to not say anything again while I'm trying to rest,
Yeah.
So I think there are different ways of seeing this. And I don't know if that's your friend's perspective. But for me, personally, that's where I was.
Yeah.
I remember I was having city council conversations because I was involved in my municipality at the time. I'm still am, but at the time we were planning something.
Let's go, girl. We love that.
And I was still grieving.
Yeah.
And first thing they were saying was so what do you think about this situation?
Yeah.
And honestly, I was still holding back tears.
Yeah. But they singled you out.
Kinda.
As okay, she's gonna be the one.
It's your
responsibility.
it's your responsibility to educate us.
Exactly. And now, how do you feel about this situation?
Yeah.
They were sensitive. They are sensitive people. They are great people, and I can't blame them for that. They wanted to know how I felt, and I can't blame them. But I really wish to see how do y'all feel about this? Because this is a human issue. We barely see that as Black people.
Yeah.
When we see a racial issue happening, we're singled out, but we forget that racism is a human issue, and that everybody needs to feel something, and we all have to.
We have a responsibility.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, this is my take.
No, but I think I totally agree with you. And I think if we're going to talk about, like, me from my perspective as a white person, like, obviously, like, I've never experienced, like, my race being an oppression to me. But the way I like to sort of compare it is I'm a woman. Mm-hmm. So, and sometimes I love to compare it to that, and how, like, when I go and I want to learn more about this kind of stuff, I can go on the internet, I can go read a book, I can go watch a movie, a documentary, whatever. But once that is over, I can put it away and go do my shopping or go do whatever. And I don't have that cloud hanging over me. Whereas, and that's how I kind of keep myself up, kind of like keep my check. Yeah, in check. Obviously, I'm not perfect because I've never experienced it firsthand. So I'll never know what it's like. But I like to always remind myself that, like, I can always put that away and go and, like, be white. Whereas, like, people of color will never have that. And I think that's when, like, because I'm surrounded in my family by white people, and I like to keep them in check too sometimes. And I think that a lot of the time, you know, when we're talking about white fragility and, like, being called out for a microaggression, I know what it's like as a white person to be being called out, like, for a microaggression. And I definitely understand it better now, like, why people do it, but also why it's wrong. And I also kind of got my own sort of way on how to deal with this, because when I was, like, starting my activism, I would still, like, get called out for stuff that, like, I wasn't aware of, and I love that, like, I'm still not aware of everything, and I love being called out for stuff.
I think there's also, when it comes to microaggressions, I don't think we should only address white people, because you know, a black person could have microaggressions towards a Latino could have one towards a white person, an indigenous person. So it happens in between, you know, racial groups. And I think that's also important to keep in mind, that, like, it's not because she, like, say for example, if Dorothy were to say something towards me, well, she's black, she probably knows that, like, it's a micro. No. You know, that's also, I think that's, and it might sound stupid for me to say, but, like, that's important, because I think you know, we kind of miss the point sometimes when it comes to that stuff. It's not a racial issue. I mean, it is, but it's also a human to human issue, you know?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I just think that when you're white, you're just clueless almost, because, like,
your experience is not the same.
I've been, like, blind to the privilege that I've had growing up, and I can finally see it now. And it's crazy that you're, like, almost, like, seeing it as, like, those little issues or those little moments in your life that you probably were privileged over someone else because of your race, but you never, like, thought twice about it, because to you it was just like, oh yeah, like, I'm being picked for this, or I'm doing this, or I'm being heard before someone else is, or whatever. It was never something that I would think back twice on, and now I can finally sort of understand it better, at least. And I think for me, you know, the feeling of, like, white fragility and being so fragile about being called out and being so defensive is because you think that the person is calling out your integrity and yourself, and it's not that. It's like everyone has biases. And the way I like to think about it is that, yeah, it does feel very shitty when you're being called out, because deep down, you know, they're not calling yourself out, but it's still, you know, it still feels like they're putting your judgment and your integrity into question. And the way that I like to see it, and that I like to see, like, white fragility and people calling me out, is that feeling that I feel of, like, oh, I feel shitty now because I got called out, will never be as deep or as bad as the oppression that these people face, and will never equal, like, the privilege that I've had.
And how I'm contributing to that hurt, and how, you know, like,
exactly.
It's realizing.
And I think, while we always, like, we've been talking about the ego thing. I think it's a bit unfortunate for white people who get emotional about being called out. It's unfortunate to see it in that negative light of being attacked, personally attacked, instead of seeing it as a societal issue, because feeling that little guilt should not be making you like a closed off person or making you closed off to the topic. I think it should actually trigger you to be like, how can I make it not so? Like, I make it not be that, right? It should be a cue for you to be like, damn, like, this is not it's
cool.
weird that I'm benefiting like that and that no one else is. What can I do to make it possible? It should be a cue, an encouragement. It should be a push to be like, you know what? I'm not trying to be a decent person. I'm actually just trying to make it good for
Other people.
And like for me, when I because I'm not the only minority that is, right? I am able-bodied. I'm middle class, and when I hear things about people being oppressed or for their class, or being oppressed because they're disabled, it pushes me to be in the mode of solution. Okay, now what can we do? What can we do to make so that people feel comfortable the way I am? Like, feel comfortable in their class like I am. And it will never be like equal, but I can think about the ways that can help out, right? It should be an encouragement, because it's not a judgment of what I have and be like, you don't deserve it, or you haven't earned it. I haven't. And it feels good to have it, but I want other people, like, you should think about, I want other people to have it, and just be in the mode of, okay, now what can I do to make sure other people have it? And most of the time, these people that are oppressed in a certain way already have solutions in hand that you can listen to and try to contribute to helping. So it's, like I said, it's unfortunate, because you could really use that guilt, quote unquote, to create
better,
the solution and to be the good person that you want to be. So yeah, I think once all of us, but especially white women in the feminism movement, see it more as a positive way of, okay, it's a cue for me to turn and refocus on all the women that need to be empowered.
And kind of as you go, kind of double check, like, okay, so did I include everyone in here?
Exactly.
And did I miss like this person's voice or this person's output and perspective? Like,
exactly. I think it becomes instead of seeing it as an attack, you see it as your muscle being trained to always refocus.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. So there's a way to see it, a perspective to have, and I think once you shift it into really wanting equality in all aspects, it's possible.
Yeah. Which I think is a big thing too. Like when we saw last year, like, okay, like, are you just doing this to appear nice, or do you really want change?
Yes.
I think there's a big difference, and there's almost like two kinds of people of like, I'm just doing this for show, and other people that are like, yeah, like I actually want my peers to feel like equal to me and to feel like they have the same opportunity to succeed as me.
Exactly. I think that's the difference, and it shows in every movement, but especially the feminist movement, because we start as oppressed people. We already start as like people that need to create a change, but I think not wanting female equality is not enough when you think about it, and when you when you open your eyes to wanting that, like desiring to have true equality, and your heart is at that place and towards that direction, it doesn't feel as hurtful to hear your privilege, because you're already aware of it, and you're already like, yeah, I'm trying to change that. Don't worry about it.
And I think that kind of relates to women, kind of almost like you said, Daniela, like when you know when to speak and when not to speak. And I think it's also about necessarily, it's like you don't necessarily have to be a bad bitch all the time. Sometimes you can lift other people's voices, and that can also be contributing.
That within itself is being a bad bitch. I think girls supporting girls is, again, I think, and this is an issue for another episode, I think, but like women supporting women has always been, like, I feel like women always feel like they need to be in competition with each other. Yeah. And I think that it shows a lot more maturity to be able to acknowledge how much of a bad bitch another girl is.
Yeah. If you're able to sort of step down
and like, I'm not intimidated by you. Like, we can, there's a spot at the table for everyone. Yeah, definitely. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think a lot more people need to understand that, like, it's not always a competition. Like, we can all, like, we all have different perspectives, and we can all bring different experiences to the table. And, you know, you shouldn't be intimidated by me. I shouldn't be intimidated by you. So I think that's also a very powerful thing to understand, that it's not always a competition, that being silent or like acknowledging somebody's power or knowledge doesn't make you less powerful or less knowledgeable.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I think segues perfectly into our next topic.
Yay.
Which is, so Kendall Jenner. I just want to start by saying, like, I feel like the Kardashian Jenners have always, like, so many times already been called out for cultural appropriation. And at this point, it's almost sad that, like, I saw this and I was like, of course she did that. Like, I was not
She not
surprised.
only did that, but she saw nothing wrong in what she did.
Yeah, exactly. That's I think that's almost like worse. So basically, Kendall Jenner came out with her own, like, tequila company, and apparently she had 4 years in the making.
Apparently.
Yeah, apparently.
Damn, she had 4 years to think about it.
Yeah.
4 years to think about it, and she still
did it?
Yeah.
Dang.
Like, she shared, like, a video of her, like, tasting like the final product and being like, okay, yeah, that's the one. And I mean, people were really quick to call her out on this.
The Latinx community, and most importantly, the Mexican community was very quick to call her out on her ignorance. First of all, because her packaging is wrong.
Wait, how?
Okay, so basically, I think what's most hurtful, and again, I'm not Mexican, so I don't want to say that, you know, in any, I'm Venezuelan, so like differences, there's differences there. But I think that first of all, she named it Tequila 818, which is the Calabasas area code.
Okay.
Where,
you know, tequila is Mexican, and you're trying to make it white from Calabasas.
Oh my
like,
God.
that's one. Two, she said that she put blanco tequila, and it's tequila, like, the adjectives goes after the name, Kendall.
Oh my God. Okay.
Like, it's just little, like, stuff in the Spanish that it's like a non-Spanish speaking person wouldn't notice.
Yeah.
But I'm a Spanish speaking person, and I see it, and I think it's the stupidest thing. Like,
and you'd think that with all these resources, she'd be able to, like.
but that's the lack of I'm sure there's a lack of diversity in her team.
Probably.
Like, if she would have had a Spanish speaking person, definitely. I think this would have never been an issue.
Yeah.
But
No,
again, it's the lack of diversity in these small companies, because they know that they don't want to be called out, because they know that if they had a Mexican person working with her, they would have called her out on a lot of her bullshit, and be like, girl, like, you know, you can't say this is the best tequila ever. Like, how is it that you, a white woman from Calabasas with your extreme privilege, who doesn't work in the fields, doesn't know the history of tequila, doesn't know what tequila means to Mexicans, how is it that you found the best tequila?
Yeah.
You know, that's offensive within itself. Like, really? And I had a lot of issues with this. But also when I posted a TikTok about it on my Instagram that was kind of funny, but kind of like talked about it at the same time, because that's how I like to address these things, like with a little bit of humor. But a lot of people were like, oh, don't be so sensitive. And there's also another side to it where, like, well, at least she's providing jobs to the people in the fields who are making these tequilas.
But wait a second. Is she producing it in California, Calabasas? Or is, because if she's providing jobs for people in California, then it's a different story than if she's providing Mexicans with jobs.
I believe that she's sourcing it from Mexico.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's like, I saw this TikTok that this girl that said, well, not everybody wants to flee their country. Not everybody wants to leave their roots and go to another country because they can't make enough money. I completely understand that. I just think there was a different way of doing this, maybe associating herself with an existing brand, collaborating with a small business, a small Mexican business. That would have had a lot more impact than just being like, me, Kendall Jenner. I made the best tequila. Really? Like, did you really? Because I think a lot of other brands, Mexican brands, would beg to differ, you know?
That's our expression.
Yo, girl.
Beg to differ.
And I just think that, like, and I kept saying this to all my friends, my Latino friends and my non-Latino friends. You know, they want to party with our musicians. They want to listen to our songs. They want to drink our drinks. They want to, you know, put their Instagram captions in Spanish and, you know, say you're caliente and you're, you want to say all that, but where are you when, like, real issues are going on? Where were you when the wall was being built and a bunch of kids were being separated from their families? Where were you when, you know, all of these people were being held up at the border? Where were you when the Dreamers got their what do you call that? Their status taken away?
Definitely.
Where were you when these millions of military women in the U.S. are being, I think Latina women are the ones that are being raped and killed the most in the military in the U.S. And nobody talks about these things.
That's insane.
But you want to drink our tequila and party with and dance reggaeton and say that you're caliente. Okay, yeah, sure.
Definitely.
Do that.
And it's crazy because Kendall is now a face of being a boss, right? Being a CEO of a company. Many feminist women are going to see that as kind of an accomplishment without even seeing all of those problematic things. And what's insane is that, like, we kind of see it more as like, yes, it's an accomplishment because she is a CEO. She broke the ceiling glass.
And she's a woman. It's
and
like,
she's a woman. She broke the ceiling glass. She made it. It's so good for us women. And that's an issue in feminism itself, because a lot of women will see it. Will see success or woman empowerment as breaking that ceiling glass, which is good. But what about the women, like the workers for this company, the women that can't even be sure that the floor they're standing on is going to stay solid? You're aiming to break that glass while I'm trying to stay afloat, you know? And that's a quote from Angela Davis, by the way. That's problematic in itself in the feminist movement. We aim to be a girl boss like Kendall. We aim to be millionaires, but we forget about the millions and billions of women workers that work tirelessly to just live.
And also, can I just say, not everyone wants to be a boss. And that's okay too. And I feel like there's such an emphasis right now on being girl bosses
or entrepreneurs,
or like, and not working a 9 to 5 and whatever. It's like, if you want to work a 9 to 5, like, just it's completely perfect too. Like, there's no problem with that. You don't have to be a boss.
And being a boss in this capitalist society involves exploiting other women. Many more women. much more women. So is that really feminism?
Yeah.
When we think about it, Kendall, like is that what we want?
And I don't really mean to, because a lot of people are like, well, Kendall's not the only one. Yeah,
she's
agreed.
not.
Nick Jonas, Shay Mitchell, Elon Musk, like
George Clooney.
George Clooney. I'm looking at all of you, like, you know, you're part of the problem. I just don't want to say that Kendall is.
Yeah.
Fine. You know, yeah, she's not the only one, but I think that she has been. It's just it was just really shocking just to, like, just even just the name of it and the name behind it, and I was like,
Yeah.
really?
And again,
Again?
like you said, like, I feel like what stuck out to me also was that, is there a problem of also calling out like women like Kendall Jenner who do these types of things more than men? Because I feel like, you know, when that happened, I didn't even know that like Nick Jonas and like George Clooney and like all of these other
true.
people had tequila like brands. I didn't know that.
Yeah, me neither.
But then when that came into light, then everyone was like, oh yeah, like Nick Jonas has one. And I was like, oh okay. Like he
Well,
did.
We should fight that too.
When did like the cancellation for him happen? Because I wasn't invited to that party.
Yeah.
But I'm clearly invited to cancel Kendall right now.
True.
And I know there's a big like, you know, the Kardashians are always being canceled for like whatever their little moves are, which
True.
I mean, they're being called out for right reasons, but I also think they're also being like under a microscope all the time.
I don't believe that this is an I believe that this is a learning opportunity.
It is.
I don't think that this is a cancel moment. I think that this, if Kris Jenner would actually stop being so greedy at one point, this could be an amazing learning opportunity.
Definitely.
If she could find a partner, if she could, instead of being, you know, make her CFO a Latina woman, you know, something like that, this could be an amazing learning opportunity.
See.
But if they decide to take it
Yeah.
or not, that's another issue.
And see, again, that comes back to, we're not trying to destroy your integrity.
Yeah.
It's really about rethink about your action. And if
And
you
learn to-
really aim to be a feminist, or rethink and see, does it really benefit most women, all women?
And just respect my culture, man. Like,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I'm asking.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
just respect my culture. Just at least if you're gonna do it, show some respect and acknowledge what it really means to own a tequila company. What tequila means
Definitely.
to the Mexican community.
Definitely.
Like, just that's all I'm asking. I'm just asking for a little bit of respect. You
That's
know?
it.
But I feel like it's different with white men, because it's almost like, oh yeah, like it's expected.
given.
It's expected from them to do something as dumb as this.
True that.
But then when a woman does something wrong like this, like cultural appropriation, it's like, oh wait a second, like we're gonna call you out for this. But
That's
like,
true.
there's not as much emphasis for like a man, because it's like, oh, like the bar is very low already.
Yeah, it's
which
true.
I mean is a problem. Like it shouldn't be, but
It's true.
Yeah.
What do we do with that?
well, what do? Is we give you guys local Mexican family-owned tequila brands to shop from,
period.
instead of Kendall's. So if you were, you know, if you saw that post by Kendall and you were like, yeah, like I'd like to drink some good tequila, then we're gonna give you. I have 10 brands here, which I know is a lot, but at least it's a lot to choose from, and I hope so that you'll be able to find at least one of those
That you like.
Yeah, that you like, and that is like easily available for you. The first one is called again. Do you want to read?
I can read.
Okay, yeah, let's just-
But I'll correct you. I got you. It's okay.
yeah,
Correct the
perfect.
language.
Oh my god.
So that's the first one, and then the other ones are the list there.
Okay. La Anitona. So this is the first one, right?
The ones that I circled, it's
This is the one you circled.
yeah,
And
but
this
it's
is the rest, right?
it's a G, not an A.
Yeah, that's la Gritona.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
La Gritona. The
Yeah.
your G is a little weird.
So that first one,
La Gritona.
I really like, because it's woman run, and their bottles are recycled bottles.
Wow.
Yeah. So you know, your sustainability,
Yeah.
supporting women and supporting Mexican owned
workers.
brands. So yeah.
So La Gritona, and then you have Fortaleza, Maestro del Cristalino, Maestro Dobel Cristalino, Clase Azul, Lalo Tequila, Corralejo, Camarera, Caballito Cerrero, Espolón, Casa Dragones. And Casa Dragones is actually women owned.
Yeah,
So
another woman-owned one. So, and if you did not write that down, we will have the list posted on the Instagram page when this episode comes out. And if you're watching on YouTube, it will be linked in the description also.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So go enjoy your tequila and stay
drink
informed while drinking your tequila.
Yes.
And drink safely too, please. We do not condone
underage drinking.
Yeah. So thank you, Dorothy, for being here. Thank you, Daniela.
Happy to be here.
It was really nice to get your input. Yeah.
It was.
And thank you for listening, everyone. And thank you for watching if you're watching. And we will see you on the next episode.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.